What is your plan to deal with our abominable approval rating?
Win elections. Win elections. You see, against Republicans. Let me finish, okay? Let me finish. You are my strategy. It is to win elections. It's not to win an election in Queens, okay, which you don't ever run against a Republican.
Spicy. There's a big debate, as you saw there, inside the Democratic Party right now over the best way forward heading into the midterms, especially as Donald Trump's economic message proves unpopular. There's an opening here, folks. At the center of it, DNC Vice Chair David Hogg, who you just saw clashing with legendary strategist James Carville over his push to raise $20 million to fund primary challenges against who he calls ineffective Democrats in safe blue districts. It's a move Hogg says he's committed to, even as DNC Chair Ken Martin warns it could cost him his leadership role. Joining us now on set, the man himself, DNC Vice Chair David Hogg. David, I guess my biggest question for you is, what is an ineffective politician? What do you mean when you're talking about ineffective Democrats?
I mean, what we mean is that right now we're seeing, despite the fact that Donald Trump has disappeared people, despite the fact that he's crashed our economy, despite the fact that he's saying that, you know, this year that your kids are going to have $2 instead of 30 under the Christmas tree or whatever it might be, that our approval rating is still at this point. So clearly something is not going right here. And sometimes it's not just a messaging problem that you have, it's a broader messenger problem that you have in the first place. And what we're trying to do is bring in some new messengers that are not only more equipped to fight in this moment against Donald Trump and build the Democratic Party into being a true opposition party. We're also trying to make sure that we're giving voters the best options that they can in our safer blue districts while supporting candidates that are in purple districts at the same time, because we want to defeat Republicans, obviously.
You say equipped to fight. What exactly does that mean?
What it looks like is making sure, one, that they're actually able to show up at their committee hearings, making sure that they're, for one, showing up at town halls and they're talking to their constituents about what is going on in their districts. But for each candidate or for each elected official, it looks different, right? And let me be clear, I'm not just saying, well, if you're above a certain age, you shouldn't be there. Unfortunately, sucking is something that is not limited to being above a certain age, right?
Who's in their 30s who sucks?
Right. What we're talking about is making sure that there are people that are here ready to fight and meet this moment and to build the future of the Democratic Party in our safer blue seats, where we see incredible young people like Congressman Maxwell Frost who've been elected, people like AOC and others. And I also want to remind people as well, some of the most prolific leaders in our party, whether it's Cory Booker, whether it's AOC, whether it's Ro Khanna, or even Hakeem Jeffries himself, all got there through Democratic primaries of incumbents.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
David, what do you see as the message that Democrats need to push to lead a fight and to be fighting and to be, giving their voters the energy that they want to see?
Well, one, I think that there are really two messages that I believe that we need to be pushing this election cycle more than anything else. One is really embodied well by our former FTC chair, Lina Khan, who has gone out there repeatedly and talked about going after special interests to lower costs for the American people. And two, I think we need to talk about a broader anti-corruption message across the board. Right now, we're seeing people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are trading stocks in Congress on legislation that, they passed, for example, with Palantir getting a major contract right before she bought a bunch of their stock, or with Donald Trump very likely having foreign governments purchase his meme coins in order to gain influence with them. So I think that's a major part of what our message needs to be, along with what are we doing to revive the American dream? We can't just be the party that is against Donald Trump. We have to show people how we are providing an alternative message, especially for our young people that are losing faith in their democracy because they've gone through school shootings, the student debt crisis, the climate crisis, and so much more. And the answer to that for Democrats is not to just say, let's defend democracy, let's defend democracy. It's to use democracy to show how we are using it to stand up to special interests and revive the American dream for our young people that are losing faith in their country and in the Democratic Party.
Well, David, NBC has a story about the White House's midterm strategy. And one of the quotes here is that the 2026 goal is to try to overcome negative economic sentiment by rekindling the energy Trump brings when he is on the ballot, a needed boost for the party after Democrats have outpaced Republicans in recent special congressional and state level elections. We have seen that when Donald Trump puts himself out there front and center, that his party comes out and rallies. Will Democrats be able to overcome that kind of Trump energy?
I believe so. I think the people that are voting, part of the challenge that I think the Democratic Party has right now, when you look at the data of who's voting in these presidential elections versus these midterms, is that these two groups are very different. The groups that are voting in midterms tend to be higher educated. They tend to be more in Democrats' favor, significantly more in Democrats' favor, because they're higher propensity voters. They also tend to be older voters as well, which increasingly we're making gains with, even as we're losing younger voters, which is part of the issue that I'm trying to address here. But we see time and time again, I think part of the reason why Donald Trump is so effective at turning out his base and voters is because he himself, I would argue, is a low information voter. He doesn't read the president's daily brief. He spends all day on Twitter and social media, and he's getting his information from where a lot of the voters who decided the presidential election are getting their information from. So he understands how they think because he thinks the same way. Whereas the voters that are voting in midterms, they're probably watching this right now, right? It is people that tend to have college degrees. It is people that tend to be more in favor of Democrats. And I think ultimately Donald Trump is going to do, he's already doing a lot of the work for us because he's crashed the economy. He's caused people to delay their retirements. And he's also disappearing so many people around the country. But here's the problem. Despite all of that, our approvals remain so low. And there's this idea in D.C. that all we need to do is throw, $500 million into a couple districts in order to win back the House and everything will be just fine. When somebody walks into the ballot box, including in those frontline districts, they're not just thinking, well, what do I think of this name that I see here on this ballot? They're thinking, what do I think of the letter that is next to that name? Right. That's the combination of 200-plus Democratic members of Congress, our Democratic governors, senators, and others. It is a combination of our brand, right? It is not just, how do we spend this money to move a race 2 or 3 points? What I'm trying to address here, what we're trying to address here, is to ensure that we're winning back a generation and address the fact that the Democratic Party lost vote share with almost every single demographic last election cycle, except predominantly older people and the highly educated. That is a problem for the future of our party, and it's not just a messaging problem. It is a messenger and brand problem. That's what we're trying to address here.
One thing that is hampering Democrats here is immigration, right? And how the American people view the Democrats' view on immigration, right? It's where Donald Trump has spent a lot of time on, a lot of controversial policy proposals and actions over the last few months. Right. So if you were advising, and you probably might be advising folks, how should a Democrat running in the midterms talk about immigration? What should they say? How should they balance it?
Well, I think what we should say is, of course, we want to have good immigration laws, but that doesn't mean that we're disappearing people to places like El Salvador, right? That is a level of cruelty that we shouldn't be having in this country. We're a nation of immigrants, right? Without that, this country would not exist in the first place. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have rules around immigration or that they shouldn't be enforced. They absolutely need to be. But we need to pay homage to the fact that we are a nation of immigrants and treat it as is. We shouldn't have a system where people are incentivized to cut other people in line because this system is so broken. But I think part of what we need to talk about, too, Donald Trump loves to go on and on about government efficiency and saving money. Our broken immigration system is costing our country billions of dollars every single year. That is going predominantly to private prisons that are imprisoning a lot of undocumented people and then helping to do things like fund the campaigns of the very politicians that break that immigration system that are incentivized to keep it broken. I also think we need to talk about how Donald Trump has weaponized things like the housing crisis and other instances of our government's failure to address critical shortages of housing, of education, and so much more on things like immigration when we don't need to have that mindset, right? We don't need to have a scarcity mindset in the richest country in human history. And I think the message that we need to have as Democrats this election really comes back to experiences that I've had growing up, and unfortunately millions of people have had. The reason I ended up in Parkland in the first place is because my father faced an early retirement from Parkinson's disease, and my family couldn't afford to live in California anymore. And then only in the last month of his life, despite being a retired Navy helicopter pilot and a medically retired FBI agent, his cost of care was $19,000 a month. And the only reason my family didn't go bankrupt is because my father didn't live long enough for that to happen. There are millions of people in this country that are having to make impossible decisions like that they should not have to be making because we're the richest country in human history. And I think the message that Democrats need to have is, what are we doing to ensure that no family has to make those impossible decisions, whether it's about health care or deciding between paying your rent or paying for insulin, for example, or anything else like that, because they shouldn't have to.
We started out by showing you in an argument with James Carville. I'm going to end the conversation by pointing out that James Carville put out, I think this is a tweet or on Threads, just called at David Hogg. He reminded me of the story of after the Battle of Shiloh, Henry Halleck urged President Lincoln to fire Ulysses Grant. Lincoln said, I can't fire him. This man fights. David Hogg fights. The DNC needs him. David Hogg, thank you very much for coming to The Weekend.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to support our work, they can go to leaderswedeserve.com.
Oh, he's always be selling how to go to the website.